to protest at your Olympic Games, you couldn't hope for a nicer bunch of demonstrators than the Tibetans. They're Buddhists, they're peaceful, and there's a fair bet that they won't be hurling Molotov cocktails or even setting themselves on fire. But China seems to see them as a mortal threat. Chinese security personnel fired tear gas into a group of protesting monks today on a second day of rare street protests in Tibet's capital, Lhasa. It follows a string of marches around the world to commemorate the 49th anniversary of an uprising against Chinese rule in the region. And it comes on a day that the US's annual human rights report has criticized the Chinese. Paul Adam reports.
Tibetan demonstrators outside the Chinese embassy in New Delhi. A small but noisy gathering, passions on display as the activists try to reach the embassy gates. It's the latest in a series of pro-Tibet protests around the world, claiming human rights abuses by the Chinese authorities.
We have 4 demands. First, complete independence. Second is no violation of human rights in Tibet. Third, no Olympic in Beijing until Tibet is free. And the third and the most important is stop genocide in Tibet.
In northern India, meanwhile, several hundred protesters are on the 3rd day of a march towards the Tibetan border. The 6-month trek is designed to arrive in Tibet during the Olympics, but the Indian authorities have made it clear they won't be allowed to make it. In Greece on Monday, another small protest, this time at Olympia, birthplace of the ancient games. Greek and Chinese officials, keen to keep it short, determined that this flame doesn't spread. It's almost 60 years since Chinese troops marched into Tibet, almost 50 since a failed revolt against Chinese rule. In 1988, demands for religious freedom triggered a violent crackdown. This week has brought reports of fresh disturbances, with thousands of Chinese security personnel firing tear gas to disperse protests by monks. In Beijing, officials have spoken of what they call illegal activity that threatens social stability. But when human rights and the Olympics are mixed, they take a stern view. The foreign minister said China was ready for dialogue on human rights, but on the basis of respect and fairness. He rejected using human rights as an excuse for meddling in China's internal affairs. In this Olympic year, these are not issues China is anxious to discuss. Paul Adams, BBC News.